How did the police do it? I mean, seriously, how? A woman is murdered in a quiet village in Devon. Just a few days later, the police are knocking on a front door of a house that's about 250 miles away in South Yorkshire, and they're arresting a man on suspicion of murder. When I first heard that, I was really baffled. How do you go from a murder scene to one particular house hundreds of miles away so quickly? Then the TV news started showing this blurry, I think it was Ring doorbell camera footage. There's a man getting into his car. There's something tucked into his pocket that looks like a wooden baton. My first thought was, that can't be it. That cannot be how they found him. It makes no sense whatsoever. Because if that Ring camera is on his house, the police already had to know exactly who he was and exactly where he lived before they could ever collect that footage. But they didn't know. Not at that point. So that video did not lead the police to him. They must have got that footage after they already knew where to look. So how did they know where to look? And how did they know to knock on his door in the first place? Now, before I go any further, I want to separate fact from speculation. Right? The police have not publicly explained exactly how they identified their suspect. So nobody outside of the investigation actually knows. What I'm about to explain isn't necessarily what happened. It's how a modern murder investigation can work. And it seems this is probably the way it has worked in this case. And that is using the technology that's already available across the United Kingdom. And once you understand that technology, the arrest suddenly seems much less mysterious. Imagine you're leading this investigation. You know roughly when the murder happened, almost precisely when it happened. It's a relatively quiet rural village. That immediately works in your favour because unlike the middle of London, there aren't thousands of vehicles passing every hour. Every vehicle entering and leaving the area of this little village becomes potentially significant. Today, almost every major road in Britain is covered by ANPR cameras. That's automatic number plate recognition. They're everywhere. They're on motorways, dual carriageways, many A roads, petrol stations, town centres, police vehicles. And these cameras don't just photograph or take video of cars. They read the registration plate and they record the exact time and exactly where that vehicle was. So, if detectives identify a vehicle that appears unusual, one coming into a small village that it has never entered before, they can begin reconstructing its journey. Where did it enter the area? Where did it leave? Which direction did it travel afterwards? Which direction was it travelling to get there? And with the registration, they already know who owns it. But ANPR isn't the whole story. Britain, as you know, has millions of CCTV cameras. They're at petrol stations, shops, businesses, private homes, Ring doorbells, traffic cameras. Now, one camera might not show very much, but dozens of cameras, all stitched together, that can tell an incredibly detailed story. Think of it like connecting dots. One camera sees the vehicle. Another sees it 20 minutes later. Another confirms the direction of travel. Eventually, investigators can reconstruct almost the complete route. And once police have a registration, they don't have to guess whose house they visit. The DVLA records tell them who the registered keeper is. Now, that doesn't automatically make that person guilty. Cars get borrowed, they get stolen, families share vehicles. But it's an obvious place to begin. Now detectives have a name, they have an address. background information, any previous contacts with the police, potential links. They're no longer looking for a mystery person. They're investigating a particular real individual. This is the point where I think many people get the timeline wrong. The arrest doesn't happen because police found ring footage. The arrest is what allows police to gather much of the evidence that we've since heard about. Once somebody has been arrested, police can lawfully search addresses, seize clothing, seize mobile phones, take fingerprints, take DNA, examine computers, recover CCTV, and obtain further evidence under warrant where appropriate. And that's when the investigation really accelerates. So where does that Ring camera clip fit in? Probably exactly where you'd now expect. Not at the beginning, but much later. Once police know where the suspect lives, they can recover footage showing what happened before he left home. Now that footage may become powerful evidence at trial, but there's no way that that was the clue that first identified him. This isn't Sherlock Holmes. This is why the case fascinated me, because growing up, I imagined that murder investigations were all about brilliant detectives noticing tiny clues that nobody else could see. And there's still plenty of detective work involved, but modern policing is increasingly about something else altogether. Technology. Every journey leaves traces. ANPR, CCTV, mobile phones, bank cards, fuel purchases, digital records. Most of us don't realise just how much information we generate simply by travelling from one place to another. So when I first heard that police had arrested a man living 250 miles away, I thought, how did they do that so quickly? Now, I think the answer's much less dramatic. Not because detectives are any less skilled, but because today's detectives have access to an amazing network of technology that just didn't exist 30 years ago. And when all of those pieces are brought together, finding one particular person, it isn't that magical after all. It might simply be that following the digital breadcrumbs we all leave behind every single day is what led them to this suspect. Of course, this investigation is still ongoing, and only the police really know exactly how they identified the suspect. If further details emerge during any future court proceedings, they might reveal a very different sequence of events. But understanding how modern investigations work helps explain why an arrest like this can happen far more quickly than many people imagine.